All right, so get this. We're going deep today into airplane etiquette.
Ooh, fun.
Specifically, the whole seat switching thing. You know that thing where you're on a
Yeah.
plane and someone wants to trade seats?
Ugh, it can get so awkward.
Right, it's like a whole social minefield, and we've got this juicy Reddit story.
Ooh, a Reddit story.
It sparked a huge debate online, and
I bet.
yeah, and it really gets you thinking about where you stand on the whole thing.
It's fascinating how something so simple can tap into like all these feelings about fairness and empathy.
Totally. And sometimes you feel that pressure like you have to switch.
Ugh, yeah, the social pressure is real.
Okay, so this Reddit user, a macaron sandwich, get this.
Okay.
They got asked to switch. Not once, not twice,
Oh, no.
but 3 times on the same flight.
Oh, my gosh.
Can you believe that?
That's a lot of switching.
And here's the thing. They had splurged on a first-class window seat.
Ooh, fancy.
For a very specific reason. They wanted to see their grandma's house during landing.
Aw, that's sweet.
I know, right? So that makes their willingness to even consider switching
Yeah.
all the more interesting.
That detail about the grandma's house is so crucial because it shows how much personal value we attach to our seats.
Absolutely. It's not just a random seat. It's like
Right.
you've got your reasons.
Exactly. So it makes those requests to move even trickier.
Okay, so the first request comes from a woman whose elderly mother has dementia
Oh, wow.
and needs assistance. So you can immediately see the empathy factor there.
Absolutely.
It would be hard to say no.
It really plays on your heartstrings, right?
Totally. Like, who wants to be the jerk who says no to
Right.
helping someone in need?
And especially when vulnerability is involved like that.
Exactly. And you also have to wonder,
Yeah.
is it ethical to use a situation like that to get a seat change?
It's tricky because you don't want to assume bad intentions.
Right.
It does make you think.
Okay, so our Reddit user agreed to switch for that first request, but then 2 other women asked them to switch so they could sit together.
So it wasn't like
Right.
a necessity situation anymore.
Exactly. It's just preference at this point.
And this is where that feeling of being taken advantage of can come in.
Totally. Like,
And-
are you just being nice or are people starting to walk all over you?
It raises the question of like, at what point does being accommodating become detrimental to your own experience?
Especially when you've paid for a specific seat.
Exactly. You're not just on a random bus.
Right.
You've chosen this seat.
And it seems like for this Reddit user, that point came with the 3rd request.
Oh, no, not another one.
I know someone else asked to switch, and they finally put their foot down.
Good for them.
Politely but firmly said no.
It's interesting how this story sparked such a divide on Reddit.
Oh, tell me about it.
Some people were like, absolutely never switch. You paid for your seat, end of story.
I saw those comments like, don't let other people's problems become your problems.
A little harsh, but
Yeah.
I get the sentiment.
Yeah, there's definitely that feeling of, I booked it, it's mine.
It speaks to the need for setting boundaries, right?
Absolutely.
Like, you can't just be a pushover.
But then on the other side, you had people emphasizing empathy and understanding.
Sure, like if you can help someone out, why not?
Exactly, and that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Finding that balance
Right.
between your own needs and being compassionate.
It's not always easy.
And our Reddit user even said they felt torn
Oh.
between wanting to help and feeling like their needs were being ignored.
It's like they were being taken for granted.
Yeah, and they even mentioned feeling resentful about the lack of gratitude
Oh, that's a good point.
from the people who had asked to switch.
A simple thank you can go such a long way.
Right, just acknowledge the inconvenience.
It's basic courtesy.
So this whole saga caught the eye of Rosalinda Randall.
Oh, I know Rosalinda.
She's an etiquette expert,
She's great.
and she offers some advice on how to handle these situations.
I'm eager to hear what she has to say.
Well, her advice is interesting because it's all about being proactive.
Okay.
She reminds us that airlines can't always guarantee seat preferences.
That's true.
So planning ahead, especially if you're traveling with someone who needs extra care, is key.
Makes sense. Like, if you absolutely need to sit together,
Right.
don't just assume it'll work out.
It makes you wonder if airlines could do more to help with this.
Yeah, like maybe better options for families or people with special needs.
Right? Maybe during booking, they could have
Yeah.
some kind of system
Exactly. Something to make it easier.
instead of making passengers figure it out themselves in the aisle.
Totally. It takes the pressure off everyone.
Randall also emphasizes the power of a polite request
Of course.
and, crucially, offering some form of compensation.
Nah, that's interesting.
Right. It shows you're not just demanding,
Yeah.
you're acknowledging the inconvenience.
It's like a little something to sweeten the deal.
And if all else fails, she says, involve a flight attendant.
Oh, yeah. Good call.
but no guarantees they can fix it.
True flight attendants have a lot on their plates.
They do.
Safety comes first.
For sure.
Seat rearrangement is secondary.
What struck me about Randall's advice is that it puts the responsibility on the person making the request
I see what you mean.
to be better at it.
Instead of just assuming they're entitled to switch.
It's like, be more proactive, be more respectful.
Exactly. Acknowledge the other person's agency.
And I wonder if that's where some of the frustration in this Reddit story and others like it comes from.
Like feeling cornered.
Yes, that feeling of being cornered into doing something you don't really want to do.
And maybe that's why some people are so adamant about never switching.
It's like a defense mechanism.
Against feeling manipulated.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really interesting point that the Reddit user brought up.
Okay, what's that?
The lack of gratitude from those who'd asked to switch.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
They felt like there was an expectation that they would move.
Right.
Without any acknowledgement of the inconvenience.
It's like people just assume you'll say yes.
And it makes you wonder, why do some people feel entitled to ask these favors without even a simple thank you?
It's like basic manners have gone out the window.
It's a little disheartening, isn't it?
It is, especially when you're stuck in such close quarters.
It's like you'd think common courtesy would be even more important.
Exactly. It's about shared space and mutual respect.
We're all in this together. Literally.
It's so true.
So what do you think about all this? Where do you stand on the seat switching spectrum?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Would you have moved 3 times?
I think for the first request with the woman and her mother, I probably would have moved.
But 3 times?
It would depend on how the requests were made.
The overall vibe?
Yeah, like, were they polite?
See, that's what gets me.
Yeah.
It's easy to say what we do hypothetically.
Totally.
But in the moment,
right,
with everyone watching,
oh, the pressure.
It's a different ballgame.
Totally.
And we've only scratched the surface here.
I know, right? We haven't even talked about window versus aisle.
Or the dreaded middle seat.
Ooh, the middle seat dilemma.
That's a whole other deep dive.
We could do a whole episode on that.
Maybe we should.
I'd be down.
But for now, I think we've given you, our listener, plenty to ponder.
I hope so.
The next time you're on a flight and someone asks to swap seats, remember this story and think about Rosalinda Randall's tips.
Good advice.
And hey, maybe offer to buy them a drink.
Oh, that's nice.
If they're nice about it.
Kindness goes a long way.
Especially at 30,000 feet.
For sure.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
okay,
I want to leave you with something to consider.
I'm intrigued.
We've talked about the passenger's perspective, but what about the airline's role in all of this?
Oh, interesting.
Do they have a responsibility to manage seat switching requests more effectively?
That's a good question.
Right. Like, should airlines be more proactive in preventing these situations?
Like maybe offer more flexible seating options.
Exactly. Or have clearer policies on seat switching.
It's a tough one for them, I bet.
Right.
They want to accommodate passengers.
Of course.
But they also have logistics to manage.
And they have to be fair to all passengers.
Exactly.
And what about situations where someone has a medical reason for needing a specific seat?
Oh, that's a good point.
Should airlines have a better way to verify those needs?
Yeah, like a more streamlined process.
So people aren't just faking it.
Right. It's a totally different situation if it's medical.
And it makes me think about technology's role in all of this.
Oh, how so?
Could airlines use apps or online check-in to make seat swapping more organized?
Interesting.
Maybe even let passengers bid on upgrades or swaps.
Like a little auction.
Yeah, like some airlines do with baggage fees.
That's actually a really cool idea.
Right. It can make the system more transparent.
And efficient.
And people could express their preferences.
And maybe even compensate each other for switching.
Exactly. It takes away that awkwardness of having to ask in person.
No more pressure.
Maybe this Reddit story could actually lead to some positive change.
I hope so.
It highlights the need for clearer communication.
Definitely.
Better policies.
And maybe even better technology.
To make seat switching smoother for everyone.
It's funny how this simple act of switching seats can reveal so much about us.
It's like a microcosm of society.
All those different personalities and needs crammed into this tiny space.
It's bound to create some drama.
For sure.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
We have, haven't we?
Who knew airplane seats could be so philosophically complex?
Right. It's a whole world unto itself.
And just think we haven't even touched on the psychology of it all.
Oh my gosh, the psychology of airplane seating.
Why are some people so obsessed with the window seat?
And others need the aisle.
What makes some people more likely to ask for a switch?
It's fascinating.
The layers are endless.
It just goes to show that even the most mundane things
Right.
can be full of surprises.
Absolutely.
And that's what the deep dive is all about, right?
Uncovering those hidden layers.
Making people think differently about the world.
Exactly. So, as we prepare for our final descent into this topic,
Okay.
what are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember?
Well, first of all, there's no easy answer to this seat-switching dilemma.
Right. It's nuance
It requires empathy
and assertiveness.
and a good dose of common sense.
And what about advice for passengers who are actually in this situation?
Okay, well, if you're asked to switch, remember, you have the right to say no.
You don't have to move.
It's your seat.
And if you do decide to switch,
Yeah,
do it out of kindness, not pressure.
absolutely.
And don't be afraid to set boundaries.
If you're not comfortable, just say so politely.
And a little gratitude goes a long way.
Always.
We're all in this together trying to get to our destinations.
Let's make it a little easier on each other.
Now, before we wrap up entirely, I want to circle back to that lack of gratitude thing.
Oh, yeah, the gratitude gap.
It really is a thing.
It's everywhere these days.
And it makes me wonder, is this just our increasingly self-centered society?
Maybe.
Or is there something about travel that breeds entitlement?
It could be a combination.
The stress, the crowds, the I paid for this mentality.
It's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture.
Which brings us to a bigger point about expectations and reciprocity.
Okay.
When did it become okay to make demands of strangers
Right.
without even acknowledging the inconvenience?
It's like common courtesy has gone out the window.
What does that say about us as a society?
It's a good question.
It's a little disheartening, to be honest.
Is.
But maybe by talking about it,
Yeah.
we can start to change it,
I like that.
turning a negative into a positive.
That's what we're all about.
So listeners, as you disembark from this episode,
Okay.
carry this message of gratitude with you.
Yes.
Let's be more thankful for the kindness we receive.
Big or small.
And remember, a little kindness goes a long way, especially while traveling.
Well said.
Now, before we taxi off into the sunset,
Ooh, a cliffhanger.
I want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question.
Okay, hit me with it.
We've explored the passenger's perspective,
Yeah.
the airline's role,
Yeah.
even the psychological and societal factors.
It's complicated.
But what about the ethical implications of offering or accepting compensation for seat switching?
Oh, wow, that's a good one.
Is it ethical to essentially buy someone else's comfort
Right.
or inconvenience
Where do we draw the line?
between a generous offer and a bribe?
And does the type of compensation matter?
Money versus a snack.
That's deep.
It's going to keep me up at night.
Me too.
The thorny issue with no easy answers.
But definitely well thinking about.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to deplane.
Time to disembark.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
and I hope our listeners have enjoyed the journey.
Me too. It's been fascinating.
And remember, listeners, the next time you're faced with a seat-switching dilemma,
Yeah.
take a deep breath, remember the tips we've shared,
Good advice.
and try to make a decision that aligns with your values and your compassion.
And don't forget your gratitude.
It's the best travel companion.
Absolutely.
Until next time, happy flying.
Safe travels.
And may your flights be filled with smooth sailing, considerate passengers, and minimal seat-switching drama.
Here's to stress-free travel.
Uh-huh.
It really is a tricky one, right? Like,
Well,
where do you
no.
draw the line?
Exactly. Is it a business transaction, or is it about
Right.
human kindness?
On the one hand, it's like if both people agree to it,
Yeah.
then what's the harm?
Two consenting adults.
Right. It's their choice.
But then there's that other side.
Yeah,
Like, shouldn't it be about helping each other out?
exactly. Not just about the money.
Does putting a price tag on it
Yeah.
somehow cheapen the gesture?
It makes you think about our motivations, right?
Totally. Like, are we only being helpful if we get something in return?
It's like, what happened to doing something nice just because?
Just to be a good person.
Exactly.
And is there a slippery slope here?
Oh, good point.
Like, if everyone starts paying for seat switches,
Yeah.
does it create a system where
Right.
the wealthy have an unfair advantage?
Totally. They could just buy their way out of any situation.
Well, everyone else is stuck.
And it goes back to the airline's responsibility, too.
Right. Like, maybe they should create policies that are more
Yeah.
fair and equitable.
Instead of just letting people
Right.
throw money around.
I wonder if there could be a system where seat switching is facilitated through something other than money.
Ooh. Like what?
Maybe a points-based system,
Yeah, okay.
or even like a bartering platform
Interesting.
where passengers could trade favors or amenities.
So instead of offering cash,
Yeah,
you could offer to switch seats later in the flight.
exactly. Or
Yeah.
trade your snack for their window view.
That's cool. It would encourage people to be more creative and resourceful.
And it would foster a sense of community.
Instead of just everyone for themselves.
I love that idea.
It would make flying more fun.
Right. Less transactional.
More human.
You know what else this whole discussion is making me realize?
What's that?
How much we rely on unspoken social contracts when we travel.
Oh, absolutely.
Like shooing up for boarding.
Yeah.
Respecting personal space.
Not hogging the armrest.
All those unwritten rules we just kind of follow.
But as we've seen with this seat-switching saga,
Right.
those norms can easily be broken.
And then it's like chaos.
Confusion, resentment.
It's a reminder that clear communication is so important.
Especially in a confined space like an airplane.
We're all in this together.
Literally.
Maybe that's why a simple thank you can be so powerful.
It's true.
It's like you're acknowledging the other person's humanity.
Even if you never see them again.
It's funny how switching seats can lead to these deep thoughts about human behavior.
It's like a microcosm of society.
All these different personalities and expectations colliding.
In this little metal tube.
It's fascinating.
And a little bit scary.
Maybe by talking about it, we can make things better.
I hope so.
Create a more compassionate and considerate travel experience.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought.
Speaking of kindness and connection.
Yes.
I'm curious about your thoughts on the airline's role in all of this.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about that.
Could they be more proactive in facilitating seat switching?
In a way, that's fair to everyone.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of potential there.
Like they already have systems for managing seat selection.
Right.
Maybe they could adapt those for seat swapping.
What if during online check-in,
Yeah.
you could indicate your willingness to switch?
And like your preferences.
Exactly, like window versus aisle.
And then the airline could match people up.
Like a seat-swapping matchmaking service.
I love it.
It would take away the pressure of having to ask in person.
And it would give airlines valuable data.
On what people want.
Which they can use to improve the whole experience.
It's a win-win.
Why isn't this a thing already?
I know, right? It seems so obvious.
Maybe it's just a matter of time.
As technology gets better.
And people demand more flexibility.
It would be a welcome change.
From the current free-for-all.
Oh, hey.
It's time to bring some order to the wild west of airplane seating.
And maybe even a little bit of fun.
Oh, yeah.
What if seat swapping became a game?
Like with prizes for the most helpful passengers?
Or a virtual marketplace where you could trade seats and skills.
That's hilarious.
The possibilities are endless.
I love that vision.
A world where flying is less about enduring and more about connecting.
Meeting new people?
Discovering shared humanity.
Isn't that what travel is all about?
Absolutely.
Expanding our horizons?
Remembering that we're all in this together.
And sometimes, all it takes is a simple act of kindness.
Like switching seats.
To create a ripple effect of positivity.
It's a beautiful thought.
It's empowering.
We all have the power to make a difference.
Okay, so before we get too philosophical,
Right.
let's bring it back down to earth.
Back to reality.
What advice do you have for our listeners who are facing a seat-switching dilemma on their next flight?
Well, first of all, remember, you have the right to say no.
You don't have to be a pushover.
And if you do decide to switch,
Yeah.
do it because you want to.
Not because you feel pressured.
Exactly.
And if you're the one asking to switch,
Yeah.
be respectful.
Acknowledge the inconvenience.
And say thank you.
A little gratitude goes a long way.
It really does.
It can make all the difference.
Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier,
What's that?
the emotional side of all this.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about the ethics of compensation.
Right.
But is there a danger in commodifying acts of kindness?
Ooh, that's deep.
Like, does putting a price tag on it devalue the human element?
It's a good question.
Are we truly being helpful if we're only doing it for a reward?
And on the flip side,
Yeah?
does accepting money make us less generous?
It's a slippery slope.
We need to explore this further.
Maybe the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready when you are. Yeah, it's a tough one.
So where do we draw the line?
Right? Like, is it okay to pay for kindness?
It feels a little icky, doesn't it?
It does. Like you're taking something pure and
Yeah.
turning it into a transaction.
And I worry that if we start putting a price tag on every little favor,
Yeah.
we're going to lose that sense of
Right.
spontaneous goodwill.
That makes the world a nicer place.
It's like those random acts of kindness things you hear about.
Exactly. Just do something nice for someone.
No strings attached.
Just to spread a little joy.
It makes you feel good, too.
It's a win-win.
So how do we balance these two things?
It's tricky, right?
On one hand, I get that people value their time.
Of course.
And if they want to be compensated for giving up their seat,
Yeah.
who am I to judge? But
on the other hand, we don't want to create a world where everything is transactional.
Exactly. We need to hold on to that sense of genuine altruism.
I think a lot depends on intention.
Oh.
Like if someone offers money out of sincere gratitude,
Yeah.
it feels different than just trying to buy your way out of a problem.
And if someone declines compensation,
Yeah.
we should respect that too.
Absolutely no judgment.
Maybe they just like doing good deeds.
It's about honoring individual choices.
And recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
So true.
It feels like we've only scratched the surface of this.
Oh, yeah. There's so much more to explore.
I bet our listeners have tons of thoughts on this.
I'm sure they do.
We should ask them on social media.
Great idea. Let's get a conversation going.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I think the key takeaway is,
What's up?
no matter what your stance is on compensation,
Yeah.
the most important things are respect, empathy, and communication.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Whether you're asking for a favor or granting one,
Yeah.
remember, we're all sharing this journey together.
A little kindness goes a long way.
So true.
Makes the whole experience more pleasant.
And if all else fails,
Yeah.
just smile and say thank you.
It can work wonders.
Well said.
Well,
It's time for us to say goodbye.
time to deplane.
Thank you to our amazing listeners
We appreciate you.
for joining us on this deep dive into the world of airplane etiquette
We hope you learned something.
and maybe had a few laughs along the way.
Until next time.
Safe travels
And may your flights be smooth sailing.
with minimal seat-switching drama.
Bon voyage.